Okay. All right. So as far as updates go, I think Devin is first on my screen.
Nothing too exciting. Invasive species season's kind of getting rolling. Michael is out currently, so I've been acting as preserve manager, which just means a lot more emails and stuff. And I admire everyone that's in the administrative side of things because it's not fun. So that's been my past month. It's been pretty exciting. We've been using Three Tree Hill as a helicopter landing pad for PG&Es accessing their transmission lines. So that's been relatively interesting, seeing helicopters up here all the time. And then just kind of staying on top of erosion. We had our roads redone last fall, so just making sure we don't get too much runoff and stuff. But everything's looking good. Very happy to be getting this rain. Other than that, no other big updates.
Cool. Jill, I think you're next. And we can't see you and you're on mute. But that's okay. We get to hear you.
Now I'm unmuted. Well, all the River Watershed Council, I've been doing lots of paperwork. It turns out nonprofit agencies have to do lots of paperwork, which nobody had done for a really long time. So I know we went back and forth for years in the early days of the forest group, talking about whether or not we should be a nonprofit. And I'm so glad we weren't, because all of us would have been, trying to keep all that paperwork on track for the first 10 or 15 years. On the other hand, if we had been doing it, then now I would know what I was doing for the Watershed Council. And I don't think too many of you are with nonprofits, but for any folks that are, the other thing I have been working on is the Paycheck Protection Program loan. And that turned out to be really easy. So, if any of you, well, and we don't know yet if we'll get it, but the application was pretty straightforward, and it allows you to pay things like rent and salaries, which you never could get grants for. So yeah, anyways, if people haven't checked that out, I'd encourage you to do so. Oh, and we have to move. Redwood Coast Land Conservancy bought that Millbend property, which has the watershed house that we've used as our office for.
Worker. The top 3 things would change.
I don't know who else is in there, but anyway, so we're not sure where we're going, but we're moving. So because they have to put a caretaker into that that house now, and actually, have some presence on the site. So I think that's it for me.
Right. Okay. Thanks for the update, Jill. Arthur?
Hi, everybody. So I'm continuing to work on the CAL FIRE project, looking at vegetation and fire history in the North Bay. I finished, I think probably by the last time I talked, I had finished the West County piece, which was northeast of Guerneville. And then I'm moved over to the Napa piece, which is up around Atlas Peak and in that area, about 50 square miles. And then I've got somebody who's putting together the fire history for that area. So I haven't seen that yet. I haven't been able to kind of compare that to the vegetation history, but I'm looking forward to that. And then I'm just about ready to start working on the historical vegetation for the Napa Sonoma County line, which will include part of Calabasas Preserve. So that'll be interesting to see that. I've been really curious about that. We kind of got right to the edge of it with the Bouverie project, but didn't get in there. So I'm curious about Nuns Canyon. So that'll be the next historical vegetation piece, and then I'll move up to Lake County, where there's a big chunk, about 75 square miles up there. So I've been doing that, and I've also been working on, I got hired by let's see, I guess it's the Golden Gate Parks Conservancy. That might not be exactly the right name, but anyway, they hired me to do, I'm working with Mark Tuckman. We're doing a project down in Marin on fire down there. He's looking at vegetation, and I'm putting together a historical fire picture going back, down there. CAL FIRE goes back to about 1917, although some of their early records don't have any locations, or I'm sorry, don't have any specific dates. So I'm going to try to pull that together, as well as go back to the mid 19th century and then look for, just to look what the patterns are. Where has fire repeated over time? Things like that. So that's keeping me pretty busy overall. But good to be here.
Nice, thanks. How about you, Jason? Jason Mills?
So many questions, Arthur, but I'll hold them. Let's see, what have I been up to? My crew's been out. We fixed up some dozer damage up on Sugarloaf, put in about 50 willow sprigs and regraded. We got some butte in on a sensitive area of the headwaters of the Sonoma Creek. So that was a big win. And then worked with the RCD on that one, and the water board. So thanks to those sponsors. And then we have been planting thousands and thousands of plants, doing a ton of riparian restoration, which, like we were saying when the meeting started, these rains are critical for their success after last year's super dry January and February. So hopeful for some good survivorship this go around. And invasive plant work really mounting up. The hemlock is bolting right now, so I try to get all that out. And then brooms right around the corner. We have vinca coming in really strong in the post-fire site, so trying to expand on the solarization efforts on that one. And then really trying to just basically advise people on vegetation management with an emphasis on fuel reduction, right? So us in the restoration field, we've been managing vegetation ever since. This is our wheelhouse. Now, doing so with a fuel reduction focus, there's a lot of overlap there, So that's what I'd like to kind of bring to the whole fuel reduction equation, is just doing it with an ecological emphasis. So I'm just going to continue to try to be the voice for that effort. And there's a lot of needs, so happy to be a part of it. Thanks, you guys.
Great, thanks, Jason. How about Kim?
All right, good morning, folks. Things are moving along pretty well at the district. Today, we're doing interviews for our next general manager, so that's pretty exciting. I think they have a pretty good cross-section of after a national-wide search, so we'll see what happens. Let me see. Currently, been working on the Calabasas Creek Open Space Preserve. We have a shaded fuel break that Fred has been instrumental on helping us to design, and Leslie Liu has been our primary project manager on that. I think the project's gone really well. And so we're trying to get a lot of things wrapped up by the time we transfer this property over to regional parks, which is scheduled for July. And so we're doing a lot of, I'm going to be taking the lead on the baseline. We got Rob Evans on the yellow star thistle treatment, and just trying to get things wrapped up so that it's in good working order before that transfer. Same is happening over on a property called Wright Hill Ranch on the coast. That's also scheduled for a July transfer. On Saddle Mountain, we've designed a series of prescribed burn units, and that Monica Del Martini has been taking the lead on that. And Fred has helped us to design a shaded fuel break at that property as well. And then we have a hazard tree removal project that's going along Plum Ranch Road, as well as over on Erlin Road. Some of those property owners are a little bit concerned about some large trees that have been burned. So Yeah, that's about all I got to share today.
Great, thank you. How about Fred?
Well, it sounds like everybody else is sharing my projects. Basically, I want somebody to be able to go out there and just say, this is a shaded fuel break, okay? And then be done. And then I'm tired of writing up the same thing. I'm too ADD for that. I've been dealing with loggers and millions of board feet, and put up a presentation on YouTube the other day for Oakmont, with Oakmont. And Adriana was so kind as to share that around. Take a look, give it a like. Who knows? Maybe I'm going to be the next breakout internet star. Other than that, I'm sorry?
Put it on TikTok. Yeah.
Oh, there's a good. Except I would talk about the ticks.
Sorry.
Sorry. Other than that, I'm just dealing with a hella kerfuffle between AT&T and my logger. The AT&T people seem to be completely numb to timber harvesting and any of its ramifications. And you can say, we're doing a logging operation right here. And they're like, yeah, whatever, we'll just be putting a line through. And it's like, so now they just unrocked a road of mine. And we got to get it rocked next week. So it's nice to hear all of these presentations working forward on the same page, especially with planting and recovery from the fires. Recovery from the fires, got 40,000 trees out, 20,000 on my land, 20,000 on other people's lands, using one tree planted, and received money from them, my God, as well as, you know, equip and stuff like that. So I'm really happy to be working with a lot of great people on a lot of little projects that cumulatively move us forward. And that's my report.
Awesome, thanks, Fred. How about Peter LaCourte?
Well, good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you all today. If we remember last time we met, we had a lengthy, wordy presentation for me about all the work that I'm doing here in the PUC Forest. So things are wrapping up here in my fieldwork season. I had my prescribed fire that was planned a couple of weeks ago, but unfortunately that ended up falling through. The day that we were supposed to burn had a low relative humidity. It was going to be warm that day, and the fuel moisture was getting pretty dry from the windy weeks we had before that. So we determined that by 1 o'clock, the burn was actually looking to be a little bit hotter than we had the suppression resources to be able to support. And this was an issue that I had with my burn. I was going with the private model where I used a burn boss from Firestorm in combination with Sasha Broman's crew from Good Fire Alliance. And Bay Area Air Quality only gave us about a week's worth of notice saying, hey, you guys have a good burn window coming up. You can burn a week out. In order to get suppression resources from the local volunteer fire departments in conjunction with CAL FIRE, you have to give them about a 2 or they prefer a 3 weeks notice, because they have to schedule like burns that they support with all the other activities they do. So looking at just how all the pieces fit together, it's complicated when we're trying to do burns in forested environments, which really have a larger need for suppression resources on site. And, you know, juggling that with using private crews, having a short window from Bay Area Air Quality Control. So yeah, unfortunately things fell apart for me just because of, these conglomerations of factors. So a good thing that came out of it is that CAL FIRE actually saw how serious I was about doing prescribed fire in my land. And I hope to work with CAL FIRE to do some prescribed fire in the fall via their new VTP program. I'd still like to work with Sasha and her crew. I haven't heard back from her for a while, so I'm not sure whether or not that's going to happen yet. There's other kind of political reasons why this fell apart that I won't really get into right now. But anyway, that's a little update for me and what's going on in my world here at the PUC Forest. I've been talking with Adriana, and we'd like to schedule a potential tour of the PUC Forest for the Sonoma County Forest Working Group. I'm not sure. Adriana, what do you think the best day of the week for that tour would be? Would it be on a Saturday or Sunday potentially?
Totally up to you guys. I mean, I tend to think that weekends are good, but if members are more interested in a weekday, go for it.
No, I'm all for a weekend. To me, I need a little bit of time out. Sunday, the 18th of April is in theory exactly 1 month from today. And that would be a good date for me. So I'd like to kind of tentatively throw out there Sunday, the 18th of April, if people might be amenable to that.
Great. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, I can send out an email and kind of just get like a vote of how many people are interested. Do you have a maximum you can take?
No, I could take the whole group if everybody wants to come.
Oh, cool. Okay, great. All 115 members then will be there.
Exactly. No problem.
And bring my kids? No, just kidding.
There is a really cool kid-friendly bike park inside the forest, so they might want to check it out.
Yeah, they're a little beyond that age.
Oh,
but
right, yeah. Sorry.
I was just joking, but yeah. Actually, my son might come. He's 20. He probably won't play in that park, but you know. Anyway, thanks, Peter. That sounds good.
Sure. All right, Adriana, we'll talk more about this offline and maybe throw out a poll and get things going from there.
Awesome. Thank you. Sounds good.
Cool. My pleasure.
Okay. Hi, Ron. How are you? Oh, and you're on mute.
There I am. Yeah, I was torn. I have property in Trinity County and Siskiyou County, and I've been up there. It's easier to do burns up there. They're used to it. It's kind of the way of life, and pretty easy to burn piles up there. Down here, air control, all that stuff is difficult. And we had our meeting with the RCD, our strategic planning, yesterday. And, you know, I know Jason, our forester, I sensed he's overworked. Here, there's a lot of people that they don't want to use chemicals or this or that. And I have 2 weed wrenches. And for Scotch broom, when the ground is soft like this, it's amazing what you can do with a weed wrench. And it's kind of addictive. You get out there and you get the hang of how to pull them up. And I can do 1,000 weeds, and I'm 72 years old, and that's about my limit. But when I was younger, I could probably do 10,000 weeds in a day. But trouble with Scotch brooms, things like that, is the seeds are still alive. So you have to go back and do it over year after year for about 4 or 5 years, and then you got them. And I think that's what we're facing, the interface between I talked to Susan Gorin in Sonoma Valley and all. There's people that have this, that people next door are different. Getting everyone to agree on the treatment that you should use is probably a big issue, which is hidden until you meet with the landowner. And I don't know how it is in West County. It's the same thing, probably. The urban ag, interface.
The real world.
Yeah, it's work, but I recommend you get those weed wrenches and get people out there instead of going to the health club, which you can't go to. You work out in the forest and you just pull weeds 100 a day or whatever, and you got them. But you have to do it now. If you wait till it dries out, you're going to break them off and they'll sprout again. So anyway, that's where I'm at.
Thanks for that, Ron. I just got to echo that. I mean, this is the time to strike because the flowers are just getting going. The seeds aren't there. You can leave all the material on the ground and you can make a major impact. It's going to take an army, you know. We need everybody on board for this one.
Yeah, thanks, Ron. Ellie Inslee, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. So I'm working on more of a planning level lately.
And now all you need to do is
Oh, okay. So
it's amazing.
the Ecology Center has been hired by the city, the community of Oakmont. And I don't know if I mentioned this before, if I've said anything about this, but we're working with Paul Lowenthal at the city of Santa Rosa, and Jason and I, and we're also going to be working with the state parks people to come up with a plan and write grants for defensible space, and also, you know, further into the wildland to try to protect the community. And so Paul is kind of, you know, all over that, and it's really great working with him. And it's also interesting because Dee Swanheiser and Ann Baker have this Mayacamas Diamond Mountain group, and they're talking about, you know, sort of a community-wide, or you know, bigger than the community, the whole area, all the way out Mark West, Diamond Mountain, to try to do fuels reduction both post-fire and pre-fire. And so it turns out the city of Santa Rosa is also going to be writing some grants to protect the city by going into the county. And it's so interesting the way there's all these groups that are, you know, potentially able to intertwine. And I just, you know, the Forest Working Group is one of the best places, I guess, to, you know, transmit that information. And I don't see Dee here today, but I told her I'd let her know about what's going on with the city of Santa Rosa and their grant writing process. And then, of course, you know, Caitlin and I are involved with the countywide CWPP, and that's just an ongoing process. And Caitlin has also been on the CLE, you know, PG&E county funding. So we're kind of mixing it up in the planning area, as well as what Jason is doing in the project area. That's it.
Right. Thanks, Ellie. Ray Krause.
Hi. I'm transitioning from learning pre-fire vegetation management to post-fire vegetation management. We have a lot of things going on in the Mark West watershed, including talking about updating our CWPP, working with the Diamond Mountain Group. Right now, there are just a lot of loose pieces, and it's really hard to get them integrated into any kind of comprehensive long-term work plan. A lot of words on paper, a lot of meetings, a lot of Zooms, a lot of not many chainsaws, and not many pile burns. So one of the things that we would dearly love to accomplish is a master's EIR. We need a CEQA compliance for veg management, including rare plants and archaeology. And we need a forestry plan, and we would dearly love to do one EIR and one forestry plan for the entire Mark West Diamond Mountain district, so that it wouldn't have to be done repeatedly on individual properties. So if anybody has any insights on how to accomplish that and how to fund that, let me know. And other than that, I'm up to my neck in fighting with State Farm, and I invite all of you to avoid State Farm in the future. So that's it.
Thanks, Ray. How about Thea?
Hi, everyone. So I'm from Monansville, for anyone who hasn't gotten to meet me. And yeah, what Ray was just saying, I think is really key, because around here in the Mark West watershed, it's, you know, the property lines are kind of irrelevant when a huge wildfire comes through. So yeah, so on our land, we have been doing a lot of pile burning, and especially since the great webinar from the Redwood Forest Foundation last week, we've been looking at how do we create more biochar with our pile burns. So we've been doing some experiments of using more water, and so that's exciting. 3 of us finished our wildland firelighter training in March, which Devin was one of the trainers for. So we're looking forward to helping out on prescribed burns other places. We are working on an application for support from the North Bay Forest Improvement Program for doing some work to, you know, kind of protect and help out our oak woodlands and other areas of the forested land after the fire, and helping the ecosystem recover. And we're also getting ready to do a salvage logging project for a bunch of the Doug firs that were killed by the fire. We luckily so far haven't seen any broom on our land, but I did find a big patch of spurge yesterday. So that was a big part of my day, was pulling up spurge. Luckily it's only like this big right now, so it can actually come out. And we've got thousands of Fremont star lilies. So that's pretty beautiful to see all those lilies coming up, and lots of other wildflowers too. That's all I got.
Great, thank you. Morning, Steve Swain.
Hey there. Sorry about that. Always takes me a second. I don't have a ton to report other than, we're keeping up with pulling Japanese star thistle in the southern part of the county. No, that's not what I meant to say at all. Japanese knotweed in the southern part of the county. And there's, as I've said before, it's also loose in Sonoma County. We've been toying with trying to introduce a psyllid that attacks Japanese knotweed to see if we can get it under control. The problem is, again, as a couple other people have mentioned here, political. I have funding to handle Japanese knotweed in Marin County. I do not have funding to handle Japanese knotweed in Sonoma County. It's not a huge amount of money, but getting the wherewithal to actually coordinate release and things like of beneficial insects and things like that isn't always easy on limited budgets. So other than that, I'm still working on trying to get UC publication out on fire near homes and lots of revisions and all the other things. And now I'm trying to get people to call me back. Other than that, it's not very exciting. That's all I've got. Thanks.
Well, thanks, Stephen. The next person on my screen has the name DBI.
Oh, sorry. That's just my, that's how I check into my computer. My name's
No
Don
worries.
Osborne.
Hi, Don.
And I have property on Mill Creek that burned in the Wallbridge fire. So I don't know if that's what it's part of what this group is about, but I have basically trying to make a decision as to whether I'm going to do salvage logging myself, which I've started, or have a forester come in and have a logging company log my property, or just leave it. It's an immense amount of work. I've cleared 2 acres of forest. I have enough trees cut and stacked. I could build 3 or 4 houses, but I've just started, and it's a massive amount of work. And so I need help making decisions as to what I'm going to do. And of course, I could do nothing. The redwood trees are all still alive, but as far as the firs, which most of the property is firs, they're probably about 99% dead. And I have oak trees that'll come back. A few maples will come back, but really the majority of the property is burned Douglas firs that are between, maybe 10 and 50 years old. Maybe a few of them are 70 years old. So some of them are fairly big, but most of them are about 1 foot in diameter. And a lot of it is on a fairly steep property. So I have a lot of work unless I decide to do nothing or have someone else do it.
Yeah, I'm glad you could join us today. And there's a couple things that come to mind. One is that there are a lot of people in this group who have now experience with salvage logging, who I'm sure would be happy to speak with you and answer some questions. There's also, I think the Sonoma Resource Conservation District is your RCD. You can reach out to the forester there. I'll put his contact in the chat if you haven't already talked to him. And then the other thing is just like, I wonder if at this point, there are a lot of people who have some of the same questions as you about salvage logging. And I wonder if it would be helpful for us to do like a little workshop or something, or like a, you know, a Q&A session for folks who have those kind of questions. What do people think? Would that be helpful?
I think that a course on salvage logging or a little show me would be extremely useful. As for Mill Creek, we've gotten some great information from UC folks on what's a good tree and a bad tree and how to assess trees, particularly redwoods. And as for home logging, I never recommend that unless you are also certified as a home licensed timber operator, just so you don't kill the streams or yourself.
Right.
But there's plenty of foresters who are available, and there's a lot of mills buying timber right now, and Doug fir is going to be going up soon. So we can talk about different ways to do that. And I'm also a Walbridge fire semi-survivor. So there you go.
Okay. So yes, there is a forester that I can reach through the conservation district.
Yes, and it sounds like Fred is making himself a resource to you too. So I'll drop in Jason's information, and then Fred maybe can drop his if he wants to.
Okay.
He will probably listen to your stuff, but just remember this, he's got Napa County too, so.
Okay.
But put in your pitch.
Quick comment. Cross property line salvage logging, multiple parcel salvage logging would be a benefit too. There are many smaller property owners that don't have enough standing dead timber to warrant an individual salvage logging contract, but it could be done in combination with neighbors' properties. So I'm not sure what the legal hoops are for accomplishing that, but something that the group might want to look into.
Ray, that's a good point. When I was talking to Susan Gore, and she talked about certain people want this, certain people want that, but some of your equip funding and some of your other funding requires a minimum acreage. So you need at least a group of people that cover a certain amount of acreage to qualify for funding. And that's where you're talking, to get you and your neighbors to form an agreement that you all are in on this project together. And that's the way the government funds projects. And I've tried to do that up in Siskiyou County, and it's really hard to get everybody in a contiguous parcel to apply for federal or state assistance based on the amount of acres you have.
Yeah, the parcels up Mill Creek tend to be pretty good size. Certainly working with your neighbors works really well. I'm doing that right now. You know, it's always give and take because their hurry becomes your hurry. But it really. And Jason is a good resource. And the first question to Jason is really, who's a good forester for handling this going on in this area right now? We've got about 4 different forestry companies that are active up here. Environmental Resource Solutions is one of them. Heather Morrison is another one. Craig Blenko is another one. I'm retired, but I'm always happy to kick a tree. And Matt Green is another one. So we've got a lot of resources that we're turning to, and you can always start by going to, say, Redwood Empire and talking to Nick Kent, who buys the logs, and say, I've got these logs I'd love to get out of here without losing money, and see if they can support you too, because their urgency is getting logs in the door, right?
We used Matt Green when we did our salvage logging process, and he was a great resource to work with, and was super helpful through all the questions and stuff. NRCS also, Jeff Kelly at NRCS is another forester that is extremely busy, but might be a good resource. I'll throw
And I believe that since our gentle administrations, the county has hired a forester as well. Is that correct? Seeking Adriana.
The count, well, we have,
Yeah,
from-
that's me.
Robert Aguero.
yeah.
Oh, there you
There he
go. So Robert, are you the RPF with Permit Sonoma?
I am, yes.
Great. Do you guys give help to individual landowners like we're hearing from Don right now?
I am happy to provide any sort of educational assistance, outreach. I do not consult with the county, but I can help answer any questions that you may have.
That's great. Okay, we're going to count on you, and thank you so much for your help.
Of course.
Awesome. Okay, well, I'll just, in the interest of time, it sounds like Don has a lot of resources. Don, do you want to actually put your contact in the chat just so that we have it and can get in touch with you?
Yes. I just opened this, sorry, I'm not a Zoom aficionado. Just open the chat and I can put the information there.
That should,
looks
yeah.
like.
There's a little chat button at the
Okay.
bottom of your screen.
I see it. Okay.
Great. Okay, next, let's get an update from Mark Newhauser.
Hello, I just want to say hi. Nothing really to report in. But I'm really impressed with the how quickly you can network with a new person interested. So this is great to see this unfolding in real time. Thanks.
Thank you. Awesome. And then Carleon, you wanted to give an update?
Good morning, everybody. We're just crazily working on all of our projects over at Permit Sonoma, including the CWPP update. We have the first sort of community meetings, which are being organized by supervisory districts, which are going to be the geographic divisions for the CWPP. First one of those is for Supervisor Gorin on April 7th. I'm, as we speak, scheduling the Zooms. So those will be posted up on the CWPP website. And I will send them to Adriana, who can send them out to the group as well. We're waiting on one supervisor to confirm our dates. So that's happening. The mapping and modeling is moving along awesomely with the able leadership of Esther Mandino and Mark Tuckman. So we're really excited about what that's going to look like. And we will look forward to the first opportunity for the community to provide their input into what everybody feels like are their local assets, what are the projects they most want to get done, and all that good stuff. And hopefully Robert will kind of bump this conversation up a little bit, but the environmental division that Robert works in has been starting to have the conversation about a countywide EIR process. So hopefully that's going to be moving forward. So Ray, you could talk to Robert or John Mack over there at Permit Sonoma. And contact me if you need contact information, Ray, or anybody else. That's about it, unless anybody has any questions.
Awesome. Thanks, Carleon. Robert Aguero.
Yeah, hi everyone. Yeah, so I can, there has been discussion about a countywide programmatic EIR for vegetation management fuel reduction. I think that's going to be going to the board next week as one of the findings of the CLE group that Ellie was mentioning. So I think that'll just be a discussion item. That's kind of all it's at right now. I'm working with Parks and Permit Sonoma just to kind of see what it would take to implement the CAL FIRE VTP EIR as well, like kind of like what kind of like lift that would take from staff or consultants to do that kind of work. And then we are updating our tree ordinance, and I think I'll hopefully be able to coordinate with Adriana to do a presentation to this group maybe next month, kind of where that's at. Right now, it's still in the baby stage. We're bringing it to the Board of Supervisors in 2 months on May 18th, tentatively, to get further direction from them. But we're starting, the outreach to stakeholder groups, this group included the Farm Bureau, the Licensed Foresters Association, and I expect many others as we move forward. So that will be a fun project to discuss in the future.
Thank you. That's awesome. All right, and then last, we just have a phone number, 707-293-6628. Unless that's just someone.
That's me on the phone.
Oh, hi, Jill. Okay, and I know Shanti is just listening in this morning. So I think that wraps us up for updates. That's really awesome. There's so much going on. Oh, actually, I forgot my own update, which is just the Camp Meeker CWPP is wrapping up with the help of a lot of our local stakeholders and CAL FIRE, local fire, and others. And once we have that finished, we'll be applying for funding to implement some of the work there. And a question that comes up, that always comes up, is fire safe vegetation management around the creeks. And I'm really interested in working with a number of you and our Fish and Wildlife representative to do some clarifying on where we're at with those rules and some public education, because I think that's just something that everyone in the county would be interested to hear more about. Oh, Ellie?
Yeah, on that subject, because Oakmont is really interested in taking care of their creeks because they see them as fuses for fire, we have spoken to Fish and Wildlife and the Regional Water Quality Control Board about that. And I won't go into any of the details right now, but it's vague, depending on which of the two local folks that you talk to about it. So I'm happy to talk to you about that offline, and also to answer your email question about BMPs, bringing them up in this March meeting. Sorry, I didn't respond to your email, but yes, I think that would be great. And I didn't happen to see if it was on the agenda, so sorry about that.
That's okay. It is further down the agenda. So yeah, we'll get to that for sure.
Okay.
Thanks, Ellie.
Hey, Adriana, regarding that, we actually at the county just published a sort of a guidance document for people who want to do fuel reduction within the riparian corridor. So it kind of like intersects with our riparian corridor. So I can put that link in the chat just to send people to, and we can connect offline about that as well if you have any questions about it.
Oh, awesome. That's great. Please do put that in the chat. And do you have any like public meetings or outreach to advertise that or to let people know it's out there now?
It's on our website. That's kind of the extent of it. It was more of an interpretation document for our, we have an exception in the riparian corridor code about defensible space, and it's a very vague exception. So we tried to clarify it a little bit.
Okay. Well, yeah, I think I feel like I just always get that question. There's so many questions about that issue that I feel like it might be nice to put on some kind of short kind of Q&A at some point. I don't know if, I mean, Robert, we can talk later offline, but I just feel like this is a question of the working group. Is that a topic that people feel could use more communication?
I feel like, I feel like there's an interesting differentiation that's kind of hard to tease out when you're looking at vegetation management or fuel reduction efforts in areas that have timber value or areas that do not have timber value, right? So if you're in an area with a whole bunch of Doug fir, especially post-fire, salvage timber makes a ton of sense. But when you're looking at, wildland urban interface forested areas, a lot of times these are hardwood trees with no timber value. So trying to create forest management plans for those areas, it doesn't seem to be the best fit, is kind of what I've seen. So I just wonder how we can kind of tease out the the different vegetation management roles for timberlands and non-timberlands?
Yeah, that's fair. I feel like so many of the questions that I've been getting have been from residences, smaller, non-industrial properties or, and they just really want to know, how do I do my defensible space work near a creek? Yeah, we'll just hold that for a minute. And I feel like this is a good segue to the list that's on our agenda of the different outreach activities. So let me just pull that up and share it so you all can see.
Hey, Adriana, Mark Newhouser had a question.
Oh, sorry, Mark.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I just had a question for Robert. Given that there's so much interest and so much controversy around vegetation clearing along creeks, and the kind of lack of guidance, which it's great to hear that we have a new guidance document from the county. But I'm wondering, because the riparian ordinance is so weak or so vague as to any form of protection for actual habitat value, I'm wondering if the county is interested in updating the riparian ordinance as well.
I cannot say whether or not the county is interested in updating that particular ordinance. I'm sure it will be addressed when we are discussing the tree ordinance update. I think I feel that the riparian corridor ordinance, the way it's structured is it's a blanket prohibition against tree removal. And then there are exceptions that are listed within the ordinance itself. And many of those require either a zoning permit or a use permit with a streamside conservation plan, which often requires some level of planting area depending on the impact area. And we are restricted in some regards by other regulatory programs. Like we can't really enforce the riparian corridor ordinance in timber harvesting, for example, because that's just the regulatory framework that we live in California right now. But I'd be happy to have a discussion with you about your thoughts on that. Feel free to send me an email if you'd like. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Great. So yeah, this is a good segue into our list of outreach activities. The update to the Sonoma County Tree Ordinance. Robert, thanks for suggesting that maybe like next month, April might be a good time to have a workshop or some kind of presentation about this. When you and I talked, it sounded like it would be that we could spend a good chunk of time, maybe an hour or something, just reviewing all the different ordinances and just kind of like educating ourselves about those, and then take feedback afterwards in a good group discussion. Does that still sound like a good format to you?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's where we're at with it right now. That's what we're going to do with the Board of Supervisors as well. That's what we're doing with some of these other groups, basically a presentation of what exists right now in terms of county regulations regarding trees. And then, I'm happy to take any questions, suggestions about what works, what doesn't work, what are the people who work with trees interested in seeing in the future. Because we're going to be developing this and we want as much public input as we can. So yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Sweet. Okay, great. All right, and then I'll just start at the top. So yeah, I last meeting, Fred had talked about his salvage operation, and I heard a number of voices saying like, oh, we'd really like to come out and see your property and get us, a better idea of what it looks like and what you've been doing out there. And so I asked Fred offline if he'd be interested in having a group, small group, no more than 25. I mean, that's actually a pretty big group, but just to go out and walk the property. And it sounded like a date in May might work for Fred. Still does. Great.
Still does. Is it, too much to just suggest a weekend?
Go for it.
Saturdays or Sundays are the best for me. We make sure, it's also, I think, for other people who have work.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think if we just put out a weekend and we just see if the weather holds, but let's just do that. So Fred, when you have a chance to look at your calendar and you want to throw something out, I'll help you advertise that to the group.
I would like to present. That was Freudian. The 8th of May. Saturday,
All right.
the 8th of May.
All right, mark your calendars. And is there a good time?
11 a.m. so it's warm enough.
Good idea. Okay, great. Maybe how much time do you think you'd need?
About 3 or 4 hours, and we'll stop for lunch and have a nice lunch in the sun.
Nice. Okay. Sounds good.
Okay.
I have
any
a,
Address.
Yes.
6699 Mill Creek Road, Healdsburg. Yeah, we can give specific direction when you want. That should do it.
Nice. Wow, we're doing things really real time right now, guys. This is cool. This is very efficient for me. I appreciate it. Okay, awesome. Any notes about Fred's event before I move on to the next one? Questions from anyone?
My connection was going bad when Fred mentioned his location. I believe it's 6691 Mill Creek.
99.
6699. Okay. No, I pass by there twice a week, so I believe I'm familiar with that site.
That's my porta potty you're using.
Hey, Fred, I was up there at your place when you did a tour with the RCD.
Yeah.
And you had done all your prep and your shaded fuel break and everything. I'm really interested in seeing the result, how it did compared to everything else. And
well, let's just say if you start your fire at 105 degrees at noon with a 20-mile-an-hour wind, your minor fuels may turn into charcoal barbecue. So
okay,
that's what's going on. And we're looking at what trees survived, and we're looking at how to get them out, how the logging operation actually works. And I suggest you take a look at that YouTube video that Ariana has pushed around, because that'll make it pretty clear. And who doesn't like watching cable yarding?
Yeah, it's thrilling.
Okay, great. I'm just going to move us along to the next one. And I think so last month, Jill had said that she wanted to connect with Brianna from the junior college to talk about developing or bringing back the Forest Landowner Boot Camp. I just want to support Jill in doing that. And I think there are a number of other folks here who feel the same way. So Jill, as you kind of put the pieces together, please reach out to us. Be really excited to offer something like this again to the community.
Yeah, and if I can just give a quick, a little context and then a quick update. Folks that have been coming to the group for a couple of years might have a vague recollection of talking about this a couple of years ago. The idea is to basically do something similar to our usual forest stewardship workshops, divided into 2 or 3 hour segments and presented in a more hands-on and outdoor fashion. And I also want to remind Fred and Steve and Carol Leone that we're hoping you all will help with your usual sessions on forest ecology and good management for critters and flora and fauna, etc., forest insects and diseases, fire safety, and fuels reduction. And Steve, we want to start with a session on chainsaw use and safety. So we kind of got bogged down 2 years ago figuring out where we could go run a bunch of chainsaws without causing big liability problems. And luckily, it turns out that the answer is Show Farms. Hooray. So Brianna is on board, and so is her dean. So now all we have to do is have the quarantine end. So now we're waiting to find out if the JC thinks they'll be having in-person classes next fall. And if they are, we'll shoot for doing a workshop in, maybe September, October, or something like that. So that's my update. Are there questions or comments?
I'll give you one. You might not want me to do your chainsaw work training.
I'm sorry, Steve, you broke up just a little bit.
I was just being glib. I'm sorry. It's not important.
Steve, that is not like you.
I'd just like to kind of mirror off of that with, I would be into doing the chainsaw training, and I'd love to do it in a place with a bunch of invasive trees. With the Conservation Corps, we found some eucalyptus stands in various size classes, and that was great because you can have a beneficial habitat impact as well. There's no shortage of acacia out there for beginners. So just putting that out there.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And yes, everybody who's interested in participating is welcome. And I would say at this point, you could just start thinking about how you might present your topic in a 2-hour segment, which is a little more time than we've usually allowed, and also in a more outdoors and hands-on fashion at the beautiful Show Farm.
Great.
Nice. That's so exciting. Oh my gosh. Well,
It is. I think it'll be a good session. And, if it goes well, maybe something we'll do annually or something.
Yeah, absolutely.
Jill, I just wonder if you're going to have some people who rent chainsaws to demonstrate how to start.
Apparently Brianna has a big surge of kids who want to do resource management type stuff, and the JC has a big cache of tools.
All right.
So I think the idea is going to be to use their stuff, and certainly since they're the hosts, we'll do it the way that works for their insurance purposes.
That sounds good.
I think Fire Safe Sonoma also has a bunch of tools. They're looking for a place, some place where they can keep them too. I was talking to Roberta about this about a month ago. It might be good to just check in with her about that.
Sweet. Okay. Cool. Well, Jill, please keep us posted and feel free to reach out to the group if you need more volunteers.
Okay, terrific.
This next one on the list, this came up last December when we did our post-fire recovery workshop, and we were like, okay, we're not taking any questions about pre-fire forest management. We'll just do that in the spring. Like, we want to separate this entirely, and now it's the spring. And so now I was thinking, oh, we should probably do something about that. So no one is like signed up or anything, but it's just something that's been floating for me. It's also an opportunity, I feel like, for, if there's any other partners who are already doing something like this, we can lean on them and just advertise their event. So any ideas?
Adriana, this is like kind of following up with Fred's suggestion of just being able to take people out to a shaded fuel break and saying, this is how you do it. And so I've always aspired to have the district take the lead on something like that. And in 15 years, I've had slow progress on that. But I think we do now have good examples of both the shaded fuel breaks up at Calabasas, and then also at Saddle Mountain, we're just kind of launching that process. So it'd be a good opportunity to see what the progress we've made out on Calabasas, and then see how the planning stage goes. And maybe we can convince Fred to help us lead us through that process. So, but Leslie Liu and Monica Del Martini are very knowledgeable about what we're trying to accomplish on both properties. And so it might be fun to get them involved with that.
Are you volunteering to help, Kim?
Always.
Yay, great.
Also, Adriana, that field trip, Peter signed off, but the field trip to PUC is essentially a big pre-fire example site.
Oh, that's exactly right. Thank you. Yeah, we could do kind of like a series. I think that's perfect. Just to, you know, get out there and nothing fancy, just talk about it. I think that's awesome.
What Peter has done is probably more comprehensive than what we have done. But I think it's nice to see different examples of how it can be applied across different landscapes. So I like that idea of trying to do some type of series where maybe end on Peter's, because that's the big picture, and you know, likely beyond some of the landowners that we are working with, because it's such a large forest and has resources behind it. But nevertheless, it's good to show people the examples of what people can do.
Yeah, we could kind of tease it apart as like a timber fuel reduction versus just a shaded fuel project.
Teaching at the JC, I've sort of put together a little compendium of different kinds of forest types in Sonoma. It would be really good to get people to look at those different ecological areas we have, and the struggles that those different places have for management, and including, of course, fire and growing trees. So I'd like to get people out to the coast, frankly, and take a look at those Salt Point type forests and talk about that, because I think there's a lot of people who consider themselves timber owners who are living in that, and it's pretty scary for me.
Yeah, I wonder if Brooke at Jenner Headlands would be a good site for that. I think he's been pretty open having people come out before.
Brooke is good, but he's a little too high. His trees are too good. This is more like Fort Ross State Park, Salt Point State Park, down along the coast, Timber Cove. We've had a lot of people in Timber Cove engage with this program before. So they're all good. No, Brooks ground is too good.
Okay.
Brandon O'Neill would, I'm sure, be willing to work with you on that. And if you need any contacts for Timber Cove, let me know, Fred.
Brendan O'Neill would be perfect to work with. Yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
And he's awesome. So
absolutely.
I think that's also a good opportunity to think about working with the Kashaya, their new forest lands. Matt's working with them as well.
Matt Green.
That's correct.
Okay. Okay, that's awesome. So many ideas. Okay, well, I'm just going to keep us scooting along here. At our last meeting, Dee had talked about this need to support industry and kind of like accessing more information to forest management resources. She was saying that she was hearing through her work with the Taking Action for Living Systems group that some ag, especially vineyard owners and operators, aren't as familiar with the practices that we are so familiar with. And so she wanted to create an opportunity to interface with them and just give them an opportunity to kind of learn, and we could learn from them. And so I'm thinking maybe like the Farm Bureau, an event with the Farm Bureau or something might be helpful. Something along those lines. I'm not I didn't have a lot of ideas, but if this sparks anything for any of you, please let me know and I'll jot it down.
Does Jeff work with the Farm Bureau? Kim,
Jeff?
do you know? Jeff, the person that was in your role prior, old RCD.
Oh, well, Jeff isn't with the RCD any longer.
I know. I think he's with the Farm Bureau.
Oh.
No, he works for like an agricultural trust.
Oh, that's what it is. Okay, sorry. I was
Farm Bureau. And I think that's like a national program that he's working for.
Got it.
Tawny from the Farm Bureau is on the steering committee for the CWPP.
Okay. Tawny Tisconi, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so yeah, maybe we can ask her if she feels like this is something she wants to partner up on. All right. Well, if there's any other ideas, just let me know. Ellie, this is the line for our conversation we started over the email, which was just, I know that you and some Ecology Center and the your consortium you're working with, I forget what it's called, are working on developing some best practices for fuels management in different habitats. And I was just thinking about, it's going to take you all like 2 years to come up with a document, but in the meantime, it would be great to start doing some education along these lines too. I mean, you guys have already started doing workshops. I think you did last year.
Right.
Do you want to speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's a little confusing. I have a couple of hats. That the workshops that we've been doing are really helping landowners and fire inspectors, and in some cases, landscape professionals design and maintain defensible space around the homes, and in a way that supports biodiversity and is sustainable. And that's so in my mind anyway, I think of that as separate from the best management practices that we're discussing, more in the forest working group level. So Fire Safe Sonoma gave the Sonoma Ecology Center a seed grant of $1,000 and I've been doing outreach. And Roberta, her idea was more that this would be for roadside fuels management, and also, sort of beyond the 100-foot defensible space zone, which is more of the garden, 30 to 100 starts getting a little bit into the wildland. So I think of this more as best management practices for the wildland outside of the garden. And there is overlap, that's for sure. So Jason is actually involved in this. What we wanted to do was get a kind of a technical advisory team together and really just gather as much information as is already out there. But the idea being, as Jason said, that that we're actually removing fuels in a way that supports the habitat. So it would be, we'd be looking at different vegetation groupings and so on, and that also suppresses invasives and encourages water infiltration rather than runoff, and keeps shade on so that more invasive flammable species don't invade again. And there's a lot of information out there already. I've spent some time gathering that information. So our process was that, we put a technical advisory committee together, that we'd actually get some more grant funding and then develop it further. So on the grant subject, I know that Caitlin is working on trying to get some CLE funds for that. And there may be other sources of funds. I think Roberta suggested a couple of bank and Rotary clubs, and then there's an organization called Our Lady of Perpetual Indulgence, which I love, that may also be a grant source, but I haven't had time to look into that. So I really am excited, Adriana, that you brought this up, because my plate is full. All my plates, my platters are full. So having some energy from the RCD is very, very welcome. And from the Forest Working Group.
Sweet. Yeah, let us know what you're looking for in particular.
Well, I mean, I when I brought this up last month, I got some, I got some outreach from a couple of people on the Forest Working Group saying that they'd love to be involved. If you would like to set up, well, I guess the question at hand is, do we start, like a sort of an informal technical advisory committee as a subset of the Forest Working Group, just to kind of keep a little bit of momentum going while we're waiting to see if Our Lady of Perpetual Indulgence or CLE or somebody is going to give us more money so that, we can hire people to make it happen.
I think that's a good idea, to have kind of like a subgroup that's focused on helping this along. That would be a really good idea.
We've done it before with these subcommittees. And I think the idea here is to develop some protocols for whoever is going to go out and do the veg management, to do it with some knowledgeable approach, to basically build in some protocols for whoever's going to be conducting the fuel reduction work.
Yeah, and I can give an example. I just was looking at the county best management practices for implementation of fuel reduction within the riparian corridor that I don't have his name in front of me right now, but yeah, just put up. And it's interesting because, it's some good information, but it doesn't really get to the heart of, if you're going into a riparian zone, what do you need to be watching out for? It just basically says, these are the things that you can take out, but it doesn't say how you would go about doing it, how you would evaluate the site in advance, the precautions that you'd want to take to prevent erosion, or, how to identify species for that matter. Or that, that it's a good idea to identify species, and that there should be someone knowledgeable to do that. So, it can get very elaborate, but I think it would be good to start off with some very basic ideas first, and get a consensus for what those basic ideas would be, and kind of get the structure in place.
Okay, sounds great. Well, while we're all here, can I just, I'm gonna stop sharing really quick so we can see each other, and can we get like kind of some hands of anyone who's be interested in that subcommittee? And I know not everyone is here today, so I can put that out in an email to the bigger group, but is anyone feeling really like inspired to continue talking about this and working on it?
I know that Devin had said he was interested. I don't see your hand
Devin's like,
up.
he's busy.
Too busy managing vegetation to advise on managing vegetation.
I would be happy to be involved in the conversation. My capacity is very limited right now.
Yeah, I imagine what I've been doing so far is just calling people individually and having, chats to get as much information as I can, understanding that level of busyness. So yeah, I don't take it personally, Devin.
I would be happy to have conversations. I'm just a little nervous about committing myself to a committee and meetings.
Right. Well, I think, and I saw Mark, you raised your hand as well as Jason, so I got your names down. And I just think going forward, it'd be good to, just kind of like carve out the work that needs to be done. And I think you'll get engagement from folks who are like, okay, if that's, if we have a clear task, then we're, all of that.
Sounds good.
Ellie, I'm still, this is Stephen Swain. I am interested. I enjoy working with you. I am kind of booked up until through May right now. So I'm going to, I hate to overcommit myself, but I would like to work with you if I can squeeze that in. So can you sort of put me on the side?
Sure, definitely. Stephen Swain on the side. Side order, Stephen Swain.
Perfect.
Good.
Thank you.
Okay, great. All right. I'll just move us along. And the last one that I had, or the last two that I have, are the tree ordinance, which we just discussed with Robert. So we're all good there. and then the tour of the PUC with Peter. And I think as far as a date goes, he's looking at April 18th. So, and it sounds like we're interested in making that part of a series of pre-fire forest management. So it won't be the last. I mean, if he wants to do it in April, it will be one of the first ones actually that we go and look at. But I think that's pretty great. Give people an overview of a comprehensive project site. So yeah. Okay. And so there's a couple of other things I'm going to put up the agenda again that I wanted to get your thoughts on. Last meeting, we were going to approve our 2-year work plan, but then we were, reviewing the 2-year work plan, and then some questions came up. These two issues rose to the top, and it sounded like people wanted to discuss them a little bit more and get them into the plan before we actually approve. And so does our working group really address forest land conservation? Like, are we preventing conversion? Are we talking about the risks that forests face in our county? I think it's something that's definitely worth talking about. Like, do we want to be that explicit about it in our charge and our work for the next 2 years, or is it more implicit? It sounded like some people felt like it really needed to be an explicit part of what we do. So I'm all ears as to thoughts around that. And then the second one, just I'll say really quick, is thinking about our membership and how we operate. Are we inclusive? Are we diverse? And is this group equitable? And how we could become more of those things. So those are the two topics that have us stuck. And I wanted to get some thoughts on both of those. So I'm going to stop sharing and bring up the document. But while I'm doing that, feel free to, if you have a comment, feel free to raise your hand. Speak. Mark?
Yeah, I just wanted to weigh in because I think I stirred the pot by making some comments in the plan. And I've thought about this quite a bit. And even though I think that it is important to look at and understand what are the actual threats and have it it be quantified on a certain level. I also understand Fred's comment that we're agnostic on these issues and that's the Sierra Club's job. And I respect that. And I think that in a way, you can't really separate this first issue and the second issue that you're raising, because if we're going to be inclusive, you don't want to offend people who are the actual owners and operators of lands. And so I think maybe the way to address this is just take a strictly scientific approach to this, and that is to either understand how shall I say this, that we know quantifiably what are the actual threats, and if we don't, to support the science to discover that. And whether or not we do it or not is another question. But having reviewed the plan, and I see that we're following the general plan and we're following other regulatory issues, I think it is important to address issues that, whether it be conversion through for land use conversion or through even for fire prevention, that we know what are the actual implications of these actions.
I'd like to throw in something here relative to conversions. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We're going through this firestorm. It started several years ago. It converts everybody's land. That's the first thing it does. And there's going to be a lot of different responses to that. Some people are going to plant more grapes. Some people are going to plant forest. Again, people are going to be changing our landscape, and we're going to be ending up with something more southern. So I'm going to stick to my rabid agnosticism about how people, about conversion as an issue here. just, I think we need to get people through their forests being destroyed, and whatever comes out the other end is probably a good thing if they take care of it.
Okay.
I'd like to add an anecdotal historical comment. Back when I used to own a vineyard 25, 30 years ago, we had Rhonda Smith and we had Lucia Varela and people from the UC Extension to assist wine growers in adapting to the landscape. And we wrote the Sonoma County Hillside Erosion Control Ordinance following the Napa Erosion Control Ordinance. I think Ellie was involved in that at some part. But we had monthly meetings about how vineyards could remove things. And when it came to Pierce's disease, and we identified vectors like oleander and so on that propagated Pierce's disease in the vineyards, we had like 100% buy-in from all the vineyards around to clean up vegetation around their vineyards. And I've noticed all these fires, vineyards became a really good fuel break for fires. I mean, I know people that the fire stopped when they hit the vineyard because it was mowed and properly cared for. However, the diversity of the landscape was reduced because it's no longer oak woodlands, it's stuff like that. So with the RCD, which I've been with for 25 years, tried to encourage hedgerows for pollinators and diverse, pathways for migratory animals, and riparian friendliness. And we had quite a we were full house every time. We had 150 people most of our meetings, and they were all vineyard owners, and they were all excited about doing the right thing on the hillsides and all that. And since I sold my vineyard like 20 years ago, I haven't been involved with that, but I've noticed there isn't much of the tech group going anymore. But where's the wine people at this meeting, and where's the UC extension? I know we have UC people here, but our local extension, I don't know, maybe it's funding, but I think fire is suddenly thrust upon us, which we warned them about. Some of us warned them about, but I think getting through to the large landowners, which are mostly vineyards, of how they can take part in this. And I don't see many vineyard owners at our meetings. And I was a vineyard owner, and I'm now a timber owner. Okay, well, I've always been a timber owner, but I dropped the vineyard years ago. Okay, but I see things both ways, and we're a unique area in the world with our diverse environment, from coast to mountains, savanna to rainforest. So I think we need to encourage forums with the wine. I'm no longer influential in the wine business, but we should talk to people who are. Just a comment.
This brings up some questions. I don't remember where we were just a minute ago. Oh, never mind. I can't get it now.
Well, I appreciate Ron's comment because it kind of combines the two things that we're talking about. One was you kind of started talking about how vineyards can be a reason for forest lands to convert to vineyard, but also that vineyard owners are, in the past have been in groups. They talk to each other. They talk about vegetation management to control Pierce's disease and other things, and build habitat for pollinators. And but maybe that isn't. There's a suspicion that maybe those forums are not happening as much as they could be, and that they should also be connected to our work because our work is relevant to them.
So Adriana, thank you for reminding me. Thank you. So really what up in the Occidental area and Camp Meeker area, there's somebody come up from Southern California and been buying up some of the fire damaged redwood areas that have been there, and they're converting them over to, this is a big deal, at least anyway. So they've been talking about, the guy apparently is trying to convert the things over to a ropes course and taking out, and he's got a lot of people stirred up. And I'm not saying that we necessarily need to do anything about this, but I have turned Michael Jones on to these guys, and he's trying to mediate some kinds of conflicts. But this is someplace that conversion or potential conversion is being talked about. There are a couple foresters that I'm not so familiar with that are working on some of this stuff, hauling a lot of logs out of there. And so this may show up on our dashboard 1 or 2 more times. So that's, this is a pretty minor thing in terms of what I deal with, because I'm not getting into conversions and all that stuff. But I think I emailed Fred about this too. So this is showing up if we're about protecting forests through across landscapes and through generations, this is something I feel like we do need to sort of dip our toe into. And I hear agnosticism, but we do need to also talk to people. I think we need to be part of this conversation, because as they say, either you're at the table or you're on the menu. And I don't want to be on the menu.
So to kind of tie it back into the work plan, I think these conversations come up about conversion a lot. I know like Jeannie and Steven, you email us a lot about these kind of issues that are coming up in our county, and presenting us with the information, and then we can have these conversations. But my view with the Forest Working Group as us taking action as the Forest Working Group is kind of like Fred says, is agnostic. But us as individuals, we can have these conversations and pursue them in kind of outside of the Forest Working Group. So bringing these issues up, having conversations, getting informed about them, and then potentially pursuing more influence as individuals, or maybe starting something and say, hey, I'm going to work on this petition. Please feel free to sign this and pass it around, or please reach out to our county supervisors about this issue. But not necessarily us taking any of these major tasks on as the Forest Working Group, but facilitating conversations around them is, I think, an important distinction. And then us as individuals have whatever we would like to do to pursue those, or with us as in our internal organizations.
I think that's referred to as an educated agnostic, right? So I think that it really gets to the heart about what our working group can do, what's our capacity to do things at what different scale. And so we've really advocated to be a center where we can gather more knowledge about how to improve the health of the forest. And so conversion is certainly an issue. And so it's just a matter of, does this group have the capacity to really address it? Or do we simply serve as a forum to be able to help bring our knowledge about what are the key issues that are provoking more conversion of forests to other uses? And so I think that would be the direction I would go, is that we try to develop some type of subcommittee that can really help us to understand what information we have and what information do we need to get, and what are the sources of those information that we can really tap into. And then, we've always been very agnostic when it comes to policy issues, and we want to, in some cases, we've had different entities participate, and then when we start talking policies, they get very cold feet because they can't be part of a group that is advocating for one policy or another. So that's always been kind of a difficult line to tread sometimes, but we try to always lump it into, let's improve our knowledge about this topic so that we can be more informed as a collective group. And then if you want to pursue a more proactive measure to influence policy, then you do that through your organization that has the capacity to do it. So that's just kind of tossing that out.
Does the open space district have any mapping of historic conversion, the change in vegetation over time as a result of conversion?
That's a good question, Ray. I think we have a lot of mapping. To what degree it's analyzed the potential for conversion versus what historically has been converted. I'm not sure if we have that information, but I can look into that.
Also, Adina Marilander was doing work on conversion about 15, 20 years ago. So she's got the GIS layers building out into creating an algorithm for conversion. This is when we were still approaching 40,000 acres of vineyards. So I would say between the air photo record, open space, and everybody else, we've got an easy record of conversion.
Cool, thanks. Oh, go ahead, Jason.
I have a hard time controlling my words sometimes. I just have to say I have thoughts on this subject, which is that it does seem that vineyards are expanding post-fire. I don't know if it's just in the viewshed and it's more noticeable, or if it's hitting the Sonoma Valley or the Mayakama, but I really think like this is a really important conversation to have. And the Forest Working Group, it's a great example with, you know, Ron's institutional knowledge of valuable conversations that were had in the past that might be dead in the water that we need to, you know, revisit and continue. I mean, looking at from my interactions with vineyard owners, they have a ton of resources. So super important to explore those resources. Then you look at who's actually doing the work on those vineyards. They're the viticulture land managers, and they have huge staff and huge resources. So they're not going to bring in outside contractors. They're going to do it all in-house. So I think looking at like the models like River Partners used along the Sacramento River of actually incorporating those agricultural practitioners into restoration and wildland work is something we could look into in Sonoma. I don't know how often that's happened, but you know, I go out on site visits for post-fire evaluations to kind of do put together biological assessments to assess fire damage on these huge vineyard lands with tons of riparian area. And I don't know what's ever going to happen with those funds if they are awarded by PG&E. And now this vineyard has hundreds of thousands of dollars to put into erosion control and restoration. Who's going to be doing that work? Who's going to be guiding that work? So those are just some of my thoughts I couldn't contain.
I can add a little bit to it because I was, as Ron said, I was very involved in the Pierce's disease process and riparian habitat work 20 years ago. And just a couple of comments on that. The motivating factor, and vineyards did put an awful lot of money into doing riparian habitat restoration, but that was just because we were able to show that Himalayan blackberry and vinca were the two main vectors for the blue-green sharpshooter in the spring. So they were motivated, and the problem was non-native invasives, and Department of Fish and Wildlife required that they revegetate. So there was a lot of movement and a lot of restoration, but it was, you know, it was motivated by, you know, financial and you know, just management reasons. What I have noticed, and you know, I live among vineyards here in Grayton, that a vineyard adjacent to me actually went in and cut down a massive amount of willows in a marshy area to creating a fuel break to the vineyard, which was a fuel break. And because I know how to sort of work through a process, I'm working with them to help them understand, you know, certain things about what they've done, and it's totally non-confrontational. But I agree with Jason that it's a great resource, and they do have a workforce, although it's a little bit less now with, you know, fewer people crossing the border. But it's a little tricky, you know, but it's definitely something to investigate because there are a lot of vineyard managers who are in the business because they really care about the land, but it's, you know, not necessarily everyone is motivated that way.
So I'm just going to kind of say again, I'm taking two things from this conversation. One is that the working group has kind of the role, as it always has, to educate ourselves, our members, and to just keep these relevant conversations going. I liked Kim's suggestion that we sort of have like a little subcommittee, not one that really meets necessarily, but one that's sort of responsible for like kind of keeping this conversation going and bringing good information to us. And then the second one is that, if we could, we would like to invite more of the, kind of like the actors that might be doing converting or management activities that aren't at the table right now or aren't at our meetings right now. We'd like to invite them to our meetings so that we have an opportunity to talk with them more often and just kind of create an avenue of communication between us. That's going to take some really proactive, us reaching out to them and saying why they should be spending an hour or two a month talking to us, or maybe it's not our monthly meeting, but it's once every 6 months or something, and we have like a special conversation just dedicated to them. But I think that being proactive about including that kind of sector, it would be a really good idea. And those are kind of like the two things I'm really taking away from this. Is there anything else that I should be making a note of as related to like how we operate or who's at the table?
Kind of involving the equity component too, and what Jason's saying, a lot of people that are doing this type of ecological restoration work, even if it's not labeled that fuels management, are the Spanish speaking community. And there's a lot of resources in English for ecological work to be done. So I think not that anyone has capacity, but just like providing simple resources in Spanish so that whoever crew managers are can kind of pass these messages on to their crews. But it seems like a lot of the work being done is from the Spanish speaking community. And if we would like to reach out to these vineyards thinking about those resources in Spanish, I think is good. I did a pile burn, or I promoted a pile burn workshop, and I got like 3 emails from people being like, hey, is there any pile burn resources available in Spanish? So I'm working with Luis Morales, the steward at Bodega Marine Lab, who's a native Spanish speaker, to just provide some pile burn information in Spanish. But I think that can happen in all sectors of vegetation management. So he's working on that right now, and I'll happily share that with everybody when he is all finished with it.
Hey, Devin, this is Stephen Swain again. I just wanted to pop in with, I'm running a class for Spanish-speaking landscape, a bilingual class in Spanish-speaking landscaping right now. We're gonna have our 4th class, I think, tonight. We have field sessions. It's being done every Thursday. I never know what to include in my updates. It's being done every Thursday night, and it's including Saturday with pruning and other things like that. If we want to try and work something, if you want to work on pile burning and outreach on those kinds of things, maybe we should work together, because I'm trying to put together a little bit of a fire component to include in this. And I was mostly thinking about working on defensible space, but maybe we need to have a whole lecture on just, what is fire? Can we talk offline after this meeting? Let me see. What's your email?
DFR. I'll put it in the chat.
Good. Thanks. We'll take this offline and we can.
Yeah, that sounds great.
On trying to hit this from multiple angles.
Awesome. This would be really good, you guys, to include in the BMP discussion too. A bilingual veg management BMP.
I have a lot of translators at my disposal. I've got tons of native Spanish speaking people who are really into this. So, yeah, if other people are interested in collaborating on this, I think it's really important too. Let's work together.
Cool. Yeah, Luis Morales at the Bodega Marine Lab. I went to school with him. He's been in land stewardship for his whole career and is Spanish speaking. So he got really excited about this, and I think would love to be involved. Awesome.
I'm sure. Yeah. I'm not trying to exclude anybody. I'm just trying to say we don't want to dump everything on poor Luis either.
So that's great. And I just want to kind of bring it back and open up the question again about diversity, equity, and inclusion and a bigger kind of lens for the working group. would love to get your thoughts about, how we are doing in terms of being inclusive, having a wider audience. Is there anyone who would like to be here who is not here for whatever reason? Anyone who we want to have here? I think oftentimes it's the groups that come to mind are like tribes. How can we be interfacing with them more, in a way that works for them and that, is appropriate and all that. Other members of the BIPOC community. I think definitely like the whole broad swath of landscapers that are out there that we're kind of addressing a bit in this conversation, but there's even more. So I'll kick us off there and then take your comments, please.
Oh, one other thought I want to bring up. We might want to measure our progress against baselines, just because, if we're going to talk to, say, landowners in Sonoma County and we're going to measure our success against landowners, that's going to be a very different demographic than versus landscapers in the Sonoma County, because you're going to see a whole lot more Hispanics in the landscaping community than in the land ownership community, especially in forests. And we may not want to measure our efforts of outreach to Hispanic. Anyway, I just want to, if we're going to measure this, if we're going to try and quantify that, UC has some resources there too. And let's talk about that, about appropriate baselines to use for measuring our success. And I still think, I know we've been doing a good job of this, but the Native American community as a landowner is going to be really important if we want to show that we are actually working with a diverse group. Those guys are going to be that's the big one. If we're reaching out to landowners and we're not reaching the Native American community, anybody who looks at our efforts is going to say you are not reaching a diverse audience.
Mark, I saw you had your hand up.
Yes, thank you. You were asking specifically about who to reach out to, and I agree, the Hispanic community, the Native American community, but also I think that if we're going to target landowners, we want to be looking at landowners that are adjacent to riparian as well as upland forest lands, because I think that it's interesting that this conversation is always leads back to fire. And I think we're all noticing anecdotally that a lot of the conversion is opportunistic based on previous fires. And whether it's out of fear of creating more open land, fire breaks, or just seeing it as an opportunity to convert it to something else, whether it be for agriculture or other types of development. And I think that, I still think that we can take an agnostic approach by just pursuing it as an educational opportunity and providing information to the community and not taking an advocacy role. So I really appreciate it. I think this conversation shows that there's a great need for better information, not only to educate ourselves about how fire is inducing conversion, and maybe that Adina's algorithm will show that, but I'm not so sure. I think it needs to be updated. I'm going to leave it at that, but thank you.
Yeah.
Great. Any other comments about inclusion? I'm gonna.
I have a quick one. PG&E is doing an awful lot of vegetation management in our watershed, and it's disastrous. They're doing what I call the lawyer's cut and not the arborist's cut. They've cut down probably a dozen 200-year-old oak trees on my property that are more than 150 feet away from any power line corridor without any prior authorization, and leaving slash and timber on the ground. And this extends for miles within our watershed. So I don't know if that's in the purview of this group or not, but the damage is substantial. Ecological damage is substantial. Aesthetic damage is substantial. And it's unnecessary. I mean, if they went about it in a scientific way and And if there's a dead fir tree that's going to fall on the lines, take it down. But if there's a 200-year-old oak tree 200 feet away from the lines with no ability to fall on top of the lines, then leave it alone. And if it's marginal, trim the oaks and remove the firs. But this wholesale clearing, and the irony is that to the extent that they clear it, they're inviting invasion by more flammable vegetation. So we're going to have native grass or non-native grasses and brush growing up in place of what was mature forest, which is much more ignitable. So I don't know how to go about dealing with them, and a huge amount of damage within the Mark West watershed has already been done.
Yeah, I'm so sorry to hear that. And I feel like that's just been a frustration for a while. I met the community like engagement person for our area for PG&E, and he's actually like a West County native, I think from Forestville. And I'll see if he would be interested in coming to our meetings. I think having a connection with PG&E would be great. Okay, well, I'll just kind of leave it there. I have a list going of folks, or groups that we want to be more inviting to, and I'm gonna put that in our work plan, and I will send out our this kind of latest draft of the work plan. If you have the chance, take a look at it, and then in April, let's sign it off. I think that'd be great. Okay, with just a few minutes left, I think the only other thing that was on the agenda that I wanted us to get to was just to say that we've got some funding opportunities that have just opened up. And I've already, I think I have and other people have shared some of those through our listserv. But just off the top, they are the CAL FIRE CCI funds grants, which is like the Forest Health and Fire Prevention and Forest Legacy grant programs have opened up again, which is great. I guess the other thing was just the PG&E settlement funds. It sounds like the board is going to hear about it in April, or is it March? I can't remember now. Oh, maybe it's their March. Have they already had the March meeting? I can't remember. Maybe it's their April meeting. Sorry, I'll find out. But I think it's April, so we'll want to mark our calendars to hear. To go and be present at that conversation to hear what they say about the PG&E funds. CLE is going to give their report at that time. I don't think any big decisions are going to be made. It's more like informational, I believe. And I think those are the only two kind of major funding topics that I had on my radar. Are there any others that you guys are thinking about or wanting to share with the group?
The CAL FIRE CCI, it sounds like the deadline is in May, and but you could submit applications early, and they are considering them on a running basis. So be proactive on that type of thing.
May 19, that deadline, I believe.
Thank you. So if you get your applications in early, they will immediately consider it. So you might want to consider doing that.
Who is that, Kim?
CAL FIRE and CCI.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel like it makes all the more sense for us all to be working together on this stuff, to be looking at what areas we want to include in our CAL FIRE grants and what areas could be covered through the PG&E CLE discussion, and where the CWPP wants, would like to point to direct these efforts. So it's interesting. It's kind of like siloed conversations on the same topic. And groups like this are going to be really important to kind of streamline those opportunities, because if we don't have those discussions and pull partners, the projects are less likely to be funded.
Definitely. You guys are gonna have a little challenge of that in Sonoma County. Here in Napa, we're much smaller. So Napa FireWise is able to kind of tie together all the different organizations applying for these grants. So we actually have one centralized body applying for all the different CAL FIRE grants, as well as the PG&E grants. So we feel like that gives us a little bit of strength in that we're having, a comprehensive strategy to how we're applying for our grants. That's much easier for us though with a smaller county and frankly fewer cooks in the kitchen. So you all in Sonoma County have, it's a lot more forested land and a lot more interested parties to coordinate your grants with.
It is true though that Fire Safe Sonoma is coordinating some of them anyway.
Okay,
And
good.
they are a good go-to group for sure.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Fred, you were on mute. Did you want to say something?
Yes, I wanted to say, this has been great. I really enjoy it. I think you guys are wonderful, but I gotta go.
Good to see you.
Okay, good to see you.
Hi, Fred.
Bye-bye, folks.
Any other thoughts in our last few minutes? I mean, I think Jason's right. We should be talking more. And I'm sorry we didn't have more time to talk today, but any other things that people would like to say about funding opportunities before we break? Okay, well, we'll just try and talk next month a little bit more and see who's applying for what and if anyone's open to partnering on some of those applications. But it's been so good to see everyone, and I hope that some of you will be back again at 1 o'clock for the presentation with Jack Cohen. Should be pretty great.
Adriana, thank you so much you're doing a great job on running this.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Adriana.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Adriana.
You guys are awesome.
Thanks, Adriana.
Oh gosh. Okay, thanks everyone. I'll see you next month or later today. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.